If you don't live in the Okanagan and you only see the headlines every summer, I totally understand why you might think, why would anybody buy a home there? Isn't it always on fire? And honestly, that's one of the biggest concerns I hear from people who are thinking about moving here in the summer. But after living here since 2013, I can tell you that the reality is very different from what it looks like online. Yes, wildfires are real, and that is true for most of Canada. Yes, we get smoke some summers. And yes, 2023 was a bad year, especially for West Kelowna. But if you're looking at a condo or townhome in a more urban neighborhood, your risk is very different from somebody buying a home surrounded by trees on a hillside. So in this video, I want to give you my version, not the panic version, not the sales version, just what my experience has been since moving here. So when people hear Okanagan wildfire, they often picture like Kelowna's on fire, but the Okanagan is huge. It stretches from Vernon all the way to Osoyoos. So when there's a fire somewhere in the Okanagan, it doesn't automatically mean that a city's on fire. That's where the headlines can be misleading. They're not necessarily wrong, but they don't always give you the local context. And that local context matters a lot when you're deciding where to buy. And this is probably the biggest thing that buyers need to understand. Wildfire risk is not the same for every neighborhood. A condo downtown is not the same as a house in Upper Mission. A townhome in Lower Mission is not the same as an acreage surrounded by dry grass, forests, and 30 kilometers from the lake. So when someone asks me, is Kelowna safe from wildfires? My answer is usually, it depends where you're buying and what type of property you're buying. For most condos and townhome buyers, especially in the central neighborhoods, the concern is often less about direct fire and more about smoke, insurance, emergency alerts, and just general disruption in the summer. But if you're looking at a home near a dense treed area, on a hillside, or outside of the city boundaries, then yes, your fire risk jumps. One thing that a lot of people don't realize is that the fires that create the most damage, they're often not the ones that are started close to home. When a fire starts inside the city limits, it gets massive attention and a response very quickly. It's all hands on deck because the damage will be catastrophic. The fires that get out of hand are usually the ones that start in remote areas, because when there are hundreds and hundreds of fires burning across BC Wildfire Service, they have to prioritize. And it says on their website that their top response priority is human life and safety, followed by property, and then areas with high environmental, cultural, or resource values. And I'll say this, from my experience, BC Wildfire Services, they do an incredible job. Now, I don't want to minimize 2023 at all. The McDougall Creek fire in West Kelowna, it was a major fire, and a lot of homes were lost. People were evacuated. It was scary. And for the people that were directly affected, it was devastating. One of the most challenging parts was the fact that you watched the fire come down over the hill towards all the homes. It literally looked like a scene from a movie. Then you went to bed and you woke up to just a blanket of smoke. So you didn't really know what was happening after that point. It looked like West Kelowna was all going to burn. So when buyers bring up 2023, I completely understand why. But I also think it's important to separate a major event from the idea that this is happening every single summer. Since I've lived here, there have only been a handful of fires that have lasted more than a week and have been a major threat. Now, that doesn't mean that you ignore the wildfire risk. It means that you just look at it properly. If you're moving here and you're looking at a condo or townhome, your wildfire risk is not going to be the same as if you're buying a home on the outskirts at the edge of a forest. With condos and townhomes, especially in central neighborhoods, your wildfire risk is going to be pretty low. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't need to be fire smart. Our summers are dry and hot, so having the proper plants and trees around your property is important. Wildfires, they might not be a huge risk, but fires are still a risk. And I'm seeing a lot of stratas right now getting rid of these big cedar hedges because they're not designed for our climate and they're extremely flammable. So if you're buying a condo or townhome, that's where you want to pay attention. Is this property fire safe? And is the strata proactively managing the fire risk? So if I'm looking at a property through a wildfire lens, I'm going to look at a few things right away. How many trees are around the home? Is it on a slope? Is it in a neighborhood surrounded by forest? If you look up at the hills and you see houses and where the community stops, above it, it's nothing but forest, that's a risk. In 2023, I had clients that owned a home in Rose Valley. They fronted onto the homes that backed onto the forest, and the fire came meters from their home. They had cameras on their property, and they told me that the fire crews were incredible. They set up sprinkler systems on all the roofs, and they were true pros. Their house was actually sold at the time, and they were supposed to close 3 weeks later. And if I remember correctly, I think we did close on time. Was it stressful? 100%. Did the fire crews do an incredible job? Absolutely. There are great homes all around the Okanagan. I'm not saying stay away from homes that are on the hills or near trees. Those homes, they give you incredible access to nature, and they offer a completely different lifestyle. All I'm saying is that know the risk before you buy, and make sure that your property is fire safe going forward. The other thing that we need to talk about is smoke. Because yes, most summers we get smoke, and smoke sucks. The Okanagan is a Canadian outdoor paradise, and smoke, it makes it hard for a lot of people to enjoy the outdoors, whether it's going on the lake, hiking, biking, golfing, or even just being on a patio. And I say some smoke because some years it's for a week, some years it's for 4 weeks. It often comes from Washington State or other parts of BC. The same geography that gives us this great climate, it can also lock in the smoke. And this is largely going to be dictated by where the wind's blowing. If you're a person that has respiratory illness, you need to take this into consideration. You might want to have a good home air cleaning system and possibly plan to stay indoors for part of the summer. So should wildfire risk stop you from buying in Kelowna or West Kelowna? In most cases, no, but it should make you ask better questions. Before you buy, I want you to look at the property type, the neighborhood, the tree exposure, the slope, and the access roads. If it's a strata property, I would want to review the strata documents to see how the building or the complex handles landscaping, maintenance, roofs, and gutters. And if it's a home near a dense forest or on a hillside, I would be paying very close attention to how the property's being maintained, because wildfire risk, it doesn't have to scare you out of buying here, but it should be part of your due diligence. And that's actually one of the reasons it helps to talk to somebody local early in the planning stages, because from the outside, everything just looks like Kelowna or West Kelowna. But when you live here, you understand that buying in the Lower Mission is different than buying in the hills of West Kelowna. So if you're thinking about moving here and you're trying to figure out which areas make sense, not just for lifestyle, but for comfort, safety, and long-term resale value, reach out. This is exactly the kind of thing that I help buyers think about before they make the move. So here's the honest takeaway. Wildfires are part of life in the Okanagan. That's true. But Kelowna is not burning every summer, and not every property has the same level of risk. If you're buying a condo or townhome in a central neighborhood, your risk is small. The key is to understand the actual risk of the specific property you're buying. So don't make your decision based only on headlines. Do your research and look at the neighborhood and the property types. Just type in the address into Google Maps. You should be able to tell the wildfire risk for that property or neighborhood. This is how you make an informed decision. If you want help comparing areas, especially if you're trying to figure out which neighborhoods and which property types that make the most sense for you and your lifestyle, reach out. These are the kind of questions that I answer every day. And lastly, if you found this video helpful, subscribe and give it a like. You'll be helping other people find this video and information as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.